All right, section 1.2. In section 1.1, if you remember, we talked about simple equations, single-step equations. In section 1.2, we get into multi-step equations, two-step equations, three-step equations even. So these are a little more difficult, but they shouldn't be too terrible. So to solve multi-step equations, we've got two steps. We need to simplify each side of the equation, and then after we do that, we undo the order of operations. Now, for order of operations, if you're not familiar, remember it's PEMDAS, PEMDAS. People say, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. There's several different ways people remember. Remember, the P stands for parentheses, E for exponents, M for multiplying, D for dividing, A for addition, and S for subtraction. Okay, so we're going to undo the order of operations. So normally, if we're going to simplify, let me change it to green here. If we're simplifying, we go this way. We go from left to right. We start with the parentheses, then any exponents, multiplying and dividing, and then adding and subtracting. If we're solving, we're going to be going this way. Okay, we're going to go from right to left. The first thing we're going to undo is the adding and subtracting. Then we move to multiplying and dividing, then any exponents, then any parentheses. Okay, so for solving, we're actually going to work from right to left in Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally. Okay, we're going to undo adding, subtracting, then multiplying and dividing, then any exponents and parentheses. Okay, so let's just jump right in. Number one, 2.5x minus 13 is equal to 2. 2.5x minus 13 is equal to 2. Now, if we look back, simplify each side of the equation, what I've got underlined there in red. That would be if there were multiple x's or multiple whole numbers without any x's. But right now we don't have any of that on one side of the equation. So we don't really need to worry about doing that first step where we simplify each side of the equation, because each side of the equation is already simplified. Now, some people do get hung up a little bit. So let's just get rid of this 2. Okay? And I'm going to say that x is equal to, I don't know, 100. If I told you x was equal to 100 and I wanted you to evaluate, tell me what it's equal to. Well, the first thing you would do, if we go back to please excuse, now we're back to simplifying. We're going this way. We're going to do any parentheses, exponents, multiply, divide, add, subtract. We're going to go in the normal order of PEMDAS. There's no parentheses, there's no exponents, so the first thing we would do is multiply. We'd multiply by 2.5. Okay? After we do that, then we would subtract 13 and we would have our answer. But we're not trying to evaluate. I'm not asking for when x is 100, what's it equal to. I'm saying find me an x value that makes the whole thing equal to 2. Okay? So with this list here that we just made of steps, we're going to undo them starting from the bottom and working our way back up. That's the undoing the order of operations part. Okay? So the first thing or the last thing we did was subtract 13. The opposite of subtracting is adding, so we're going to add 13 to one side, and if we do it to one side, remember, we have to do it to the other as well. Okay, so the minus 13 plus 13, they cancel out. I've got 2.5x is equal to, now 2 plus 13, that would be 15. Okay, subtracting 13 is done. Okay, the last thing we need to get rid of, multiplying by 2.5, or 2.5. The opposite of multiplying is dividing, so we're going to divide both sides by 2.5. Okay, divide both sides by 2.5. 2.5x divided by 2.5 leaves you with x. 15 divided by 2.5. Again, not expecting you to know that. If you did, that'd be great. But if not, just go ahead and use a calculator. You're going to find that x is equal to 6, and we've undone multiplying. This was just an example. We don't need this part. So there aren't any more steps to undo. We're down to our answer. X is equal to 6. Again, if you're not sure if that's the right answer, go ahead and plug that back in. 2.5 times 6. Whoops, let's get rid of that. 6 minus 13, we'll see if that's equal to 2. 2.5 times 6, that is 15. Minus 13, yeah, that's equal to 2. It checks out. Okay, so 6 is the right answer there. Let's try another one here. Number 2. 15 equals 1.5r plus 3. Okay? We don't need to make the list every time, these steps up here. We don't need to do that every time, but if you're not sure, that's certainly a great place to start to keep yourself organized and kind of on the right path. Think about the order of operations. Adding and subtracting is at the end, so that's the first thing we need to undo. So we're going to do that by subtracting 3. 15 minus 3 is 12. 1.5 r. Whoops, let's make that a little better of an r. And the 3's go away. So I'm left with 12 equals 1.5 r. Last thing we need to do is divide by 1.5 on both sides. 1.5. 12 divided by 1.5, that is 8, equals 1.5's cancel. We're left with r. If you want to leave it as 8 equals r, that's perfectly fine. If you want to rewrite it with the variable on the left, r equals 8, that is perfectly acceptable as well. All right, let's move on to something a little more difficult. Number 3. This one is going to have variables on both sides, or not both sides, but more than one variable. 9x minus 6x plus 15 is equal to negative 12. Okay, so we've got more than one variable. They are the same variable, 9x, 6x. This is where the simplify each side of the equation comes from. If I have $9 and I spend 6, how much am I left with? That would be $3. So I've got 3x plus 15 is equal to negative 12. Everything else in the equation, specifically the 15 and the negative 12, stays exactly the same. There's no need to change that because we're not doing anything with them at the moment. The only thing we're working with is cleaning up the multiple x values. Okay, so once we're to this line, the 3x plus 15 equals negative 12, that's very much like these two equations right here. 2.5x minus 13 equals 2. 15 equals 1.5r plus 3. They're basically the same problem. So we're just going to go back to undoing the order of operations. We get rid of adding and subtracting first by subtracting, in this case. 15's go away. 3x equals negative 12 minus 15. That's like if I owe $12 and then I borrow 15 more from somebody, that means I owe $27 total. Okay? So we've gotten rid of the adding. Now we got to get rid of the multiplying. I'm going to do that by dividing. Divide both sides by 3. X is equal to negative 9. Okay, so one extra step, really not that difficult, but it is an extra step that we need to be aware of. Okay, let's try another one here. Number 4. How about 18 equals negative 2x minus 10x plus 12. Okay, again, we have multiple x values, negative 2, negative 10. If I owe $2 and then I borrow 10 more, that means I owe $12 total, negative 12x. Still have the plus 12 on the end, 18 on the left-hand side. None of that changes. And once again, we're basically to the same type of problem. Once you can get the equation to something that looks like this, it's really the same problem over and over. We're just using different numbers. Get rid of the adding by subtracting. 18 minus 12 is 6. Negative 12x, those go away. Divide both sides by negative 12. Divide both sides by negative 12. 6 divided by 12, you think of it as a fraction. 6 over 12 is 1/2. But remember, it was positive over negative. Positive divided by a negative is a negative. 12's cancel, just left with x. So x is equal to negative 1/2. All right, now I want to throw one more type of problem at you, maybe a little harder. What problem are we on? That was number 4, so this will be number 5. Number 5, 2 times the quantity 1 minus x in parentheses and then plus 3 is equal to negative 8. Now, it might look a little daunting, but let's think about how we could simplify this expression. What I hope is standing out to you right away is the distributive property. When I do the distributive property, I draw those little arcs just to keep myself organized. I know I need to multiply the 2 by the 1 and the x. Okay, so 2 times 1, that would be 2. And I think of this as 2 times negative x. So I got positive times a negative would be a negative. 2 times x is 2x. Still have the plus 3 is equal to negative 8. Okay? Are there anything or any items on the left-hand side that we can combine? Yes. Okay, we got the 2, the 3. Now, this negative 2, or this minus sign specifically, that stays with the x. Okay? So really, we're just looking at 2 plus 3. If I have $2, I add 3 more. That means I have $5 minus 2x is equal to negative 8. Okay? So now we're basically the same problem. We want to get the x by itself. So let's get rid of this 5. It's a positive 5, so if I add 5, that gives me 10. I don't want 10, I want 0. So I don't want to add 5. What I want to do is subtract 5. And if I'm going to subtract 5 on one side, I better be subtracting 5 on the other. Okay, so the 5 minus 5 is gone, but I didn't do anything with this minus sign. Okay, so on the left-hand side, I've got negative 2x is equal to negative 8 minus 5 is negative 13. Okay, so negative 2x is equal to negative 13. One last step to go. Divide both sides by negative 2. That leaves me with x. Negative 13 divided by negative 2. Well, I got negative divided by negative is a positive, so I don't need to worry about the sign. 13 divided by 2, if you want to leave it as a fraction, 13 over 2 is fine. If you want to write it as a mixed number of 6.5, that is okay. Or if you want to write it as a decimal, 6.5, that is fine with me as well. All right, let's try one more like that. Let's go with negative, let's see, this is problem number 6. Negative 4 times 2m plus 5 minus 3m is equal to 35. Okay, so negative 4 times 2m plus 5 minus 3m is equal to 35. First thing I'm going to do is distribute. Okay, so I've got negative 4 times 2m gives me negative 8m. Negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. And then I still have minus 3m equals 35. Do I have things to combine? Absolutely I do. Okay, so negative 8m right here, negative 8m, negative 3m, negative, plus a negative. We're not multiplying here, we're adding. That's like if I owe $8 and I borrow 3 more, that means I am now down $11. Negative 11m minus 20 is equal to 35. And again, it's the same problem here. Get rid of your adding and subtracting, get rid of the number in front of the variable, and you're done. Okay, get rid of the minus 20 by adding 20 plus 20. Negative 11m is equal to, let's see, 35 plus 20, that is 55. Move that down. And then divide both sides by negative 11, because the negative 11s will cancel. M is equal to 55 divided by 11 is 5. If I had positive 55, negative 11, positive divided by a negative is a negative.